He risked everything to save his family from the raging river. They say prairie weather can turn on you faster than a rattlesnake. One moment the sun's warm on your back, and the next the sky splits open like the heavens themselves are angry. But I'll never forget that day, the day the river rose up and tried to take us. It began with the kind of morning you remember fondly. A still golden peace stretched out across the land. Birds sang soft from the cottonwoods, and the scent of damp earth still clung to the air from last night's dew. Our cabin creaked as it settled into the warmth of the rising sun. It felt like the kind of morning where nothing could go wrong. Pa was loading the wagon, as he always did when it was time to head into town. His motions were steady, measured like the ticking of a good pocket watch. Every box and sack had its place. I sat on the porch step, watching him pull the canvas tighter across the wagon bed. Ma was inside finishing up her baking. 2 dozen eggs and a warm loaf of rye bread wrapped in cloth, ready for trade. I still remember the way Ma stepped out onto the porch, drying her hands on her apron, and looked toward the horizon. Her brows were drawn, not quite worried, but watchful. "Eli," she said softly, "it feels strange today. You smell that?" Pa straightened up and sniffed the air. "Just spring in the air, Sarah," he answered, with a slight nod. "We'll be back before supper." She didn't reply, but I saw the way she hesitated before going back inside. Her eyes lingered on the sky. We set off just after breakfast. I climbed up front with Pa for a while, then moved to the back of the wagon so I could dangle my legs off the edge and feel the breeze on my face. Annie sat beside Ma, wide-eyed and full of questions. She was only 6, but she already asked questions like someone twice her age. The prairie rolled out before us like an ocean of waving grass. The sun was still shining, but the light had shifted, like something wasn't quite right. The air had turned heavy and a silence settled over the land. Even the birds stopped singing. By mid-morning, clouds had begun gathering, thick, low, and gray, stacking over each other in the western sky like bruises spreading across a pale cheek. I could feel the air change. The wind died, and the stillness was so sharp it made your neck prickle. The first raindrop hit the back of my hand, then another, then the sky opened up. Rain fell like it had a purpose. Cold, hard, soaking through my shirt and down my spine in seconds. Pa pulled his coat tight and urged the horses forward. "The storm's coming in fast," he muttered. "We'll push through." The wagon wheels groaned as they rolled into deeper ruts. The road had turned to thick mud, sucking at the wheels with every rotation. Ma pulled her shawl over her head and turned toward Annie. "Stay close to me now, sugar," she said, brushing a lock of wet hair from her forehead. When we reached Miller's Crossing, I could tell right away something was wrong. The river was angry. The calm, slow-moving stream we usually crossed with ease had become a churning, muddy force, swollen from the mountains and moving fast. Logs, branches, and debris tumbled through the current. The riverbank was already eroding, and the water is licking at the wheel ruts from wagons that had passed just days earlier. Hall brought the wagon to a halt. He climbed down, stepped through the mud, and walked to the river's edge. He stood there a long while, watching the water. I saw him grip his jaw, thinking, calculating. The rain pounded on his hat. The storm behind us was closing fast. Ma stepped down from the wagon and walked to his side. "Eli," she said carefully, "we should wait. There's a shelter half a mile back. We can ride it out there." Pa looked up at the clouds. "If we wait," he said, "this river'll double by sundown, and there's no way we're crossing then. We got eggs, bread. It won't keep. We go slow. I'll lead the horses." Ma didn't argue, but her face said enough. We entered the river slow, wheels creaking, horses snorting nervously as the cold water rose around their legs. Pa walked ahead with the reins in his hand, boots disappearing into the muddy water. The river tugged at the wagon immediately. Ma told Annie to stay still. I held onto the sideboard tight. The current was faster than I'd ever seen it. About halfway across, it happened. The back left wheel struck something hard, a submerged log or maybe a boulder. The wagon jolted and tilted violently. The horses panicked. One of them reared, kicking at the water. The wagon listed sideways, and then it happened so fast I can hardly remember it clearly. A crack, a scream. The canvas tore. Water poured in. "Elijah!" Ma screamed. I slipped. The world spun. Cold water filled my boots, then my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see. Then strong arms grabbed me. Pa. He pulled me up through the current and shoved me onto a rock that jutted just above the water's edge. I coughed and gasped and turned to see him dive under again without hesitation. Ma was screaming. I could hear her through the roar. Annie had been thrown down between the wagon bed and the horse's yoke. She was stuck. Pa reached her, cut the harness straps with his belt knife. His hands were red with blood from the leather and the jagged wood. He pulled Annie free, slung her over his shoulder, and pushed forward through the river toward us. The water nearly knocked him over twice, but he kept going. When he reached the rock, he collapsed beside us, still holding Annie tight. He was soaked, shivering, and silent. We were safe. The wagon, our supplies, the eggs, Ma's bread, all gone, swept downstream. We huddled under the trees that night in an old trapper's shelter near the riverbank. The roof leaked, but it was dry enough. Pa built a fire with what little dry wood he could find. His hands shook as he struck the flint. Ma sat close beside us, holding Annie in her arms. We sat there in silence, listening to the storm roll away across the prairie. Pa didn't say much that night, but he didn't need to. What Pa did out there in that river, how he pulled us from the current with nothing but grit and love, still gives me chills to this day. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who believes in family, faith, and frontier courage. These prairie nights may be cold, but there's always room by the fire. Next time, I'll tell you about the winter that townsfolk nearly starved and the secret Pa kept that saved more lives than we ever knew. But that's a story for another fire.